All right. That was a fantastic panel and a fantastic way to start the day. I'm not sure how I feel, Evan, about the fact that you're outside. It makes me a little jealous. Oh, dude, your fans are here.
I think they're applauding for the last panel. I don't think they're applauding for me.
All right. So with that, we bring onto the stage Evan Shapiro. Some of you may know Evan already. If you don't, you're going to hear an extraordinary talk. When I tried to figure out how to describe Evan, the best thing that I can say is he's the most experienced executive I've ever known who's really never worked for a company. He's always been his own man. He's always said what's on his mind. If you don't follow him on Twitter, you should. We'll make sure we share that. With that, Evan has a really interesting future of the future of media. I will tell you that the phrase media wars came from him. It was not suggested. And with that, Evan, take it away.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I decided to be outside today to make, well, first of all, it's been such a long year inside, a year, this week. I decided to be outside, but also to show New York, since this is New York City Media Lab. So thanks to New York City Media Lab for inviting me today. Thanks to everybody for coming. I was asked to do this today because I think of the stuff I publish on LinkedIn, and primarily because of this Lumascape, or this infographic media map of the universe I created in the middle of last year. And the reason I created this map was, prior to this point, this was the map of the media landscape by Recode. And I used it every year to teach a class at NYU, and then I started teaching at Fordham this past year. And I used this to kind of show the landscape of, not kind of, to show the media landscape of who the competitors were. And then as I was preparing for the school year at the end of last year and going into this year for Fordham, this landscape became obviously, just inadequate. And, the primary reason for that is, if you look at this landscape, that what you look at is, well, this is Disney versus Netflix versus AT&T versus Verizon for some reason, and Comcast and Charter and some of these other smaller planets. And they look, these bubbles look like they're the primary combatants in the streaming wars or the media landscape. And then off to the right here, ghosted in gray, are 4 companies that combine are worth $5 trillion. And also one company left off there, Microsoft, which is also worth $1.5 trillion. And these companies are definitely in the media landscape. Apple has a television property, Amazon has a television property, Google has video properties, Facebook is in the media business. And they are all competing for dollars for advertising, but they're also competing for attention. And so, if you're looking at this map and thinking this is what I have to navigate to get through the media landscape, you're either going to get lost, you're going to fall off the edge because you think the world is flat, or you're going to run into a big planet that you didn't expect. And, like the Lord of the Rings book, the current media landscape is this thorny, twisty tale of different lands and different people combating to find the gold at the end of the story. And when I read Lord of the Rings, the thing I always do is go back to the beginning of the book and look at that map. And so I thought we needed a more accurate landscape, a more accurate map of the universe, to be able to show who the combatants are in the war for attention, but also to understand what's at stake and to really start to predict the twists and turns ahead of us. So this is what I created, and it takes a second for Adobe to zoom focus. So give it a second. Okay, so there you go. What you can see here is I created a map, and the key, this is not to scale, but the size of the planets are predicted by the market cap of each one of these companies. And then I tried to create basically solar systems of media types so that you could see how everybody coexists around the horn here. And when you look at this map, what you can see, first of all, it's really important if you're entering the media universe, or you're a part of the media universe, or let's say you're a content creator and you want to try to sell your content in the media universe, you have to look at everything in context of each other. Everything is relative. And suddenly on this map, Disney and Netflix don't look so big, right? Comcast doesn't look so big. Certainly, when you look at this, the trillion-dollar Death Stars that circle this universe, as I call them, look huge. And in context of those, you have to look at the business models of all the smaller planets around them. And so when you're navigating this media universe and you're looking to either sell your wares or gain audience or turn into create a business model, these are all the planets that you have to navigate as you go through here. And when you look at this, you have to think about not streaming wars or market share, but the media wars. And in the media wars, if the conflict in the Middle East is about oil, the media wars is all about attention, the war for your attention. And yes, the purple gaming solar system is competing with the red TV solar system, which is competing with the blue social media solar system, which is competing with a subset of the television solar system, which is the pink local solar system. And so all of these things, which is competing with the orange audio solar system. And so all of these smaller subsets are competing for your attention, and they're competing with each other. If you need a good example of that, Netflix this past week announced that they're creating basically a TikTok-like service on their mobile app. Why? Because they definitely see, according to their last earnings report, that TikTok is a major competitor for their audience's attention. And that is how the ecosystem is going to work. Spotify is competing for your attention against Activision, is competing for your attention against Roku, is competing for your attention against Amazon, is competing for your attention against Facebook and Twitter. And within these, so it's local versus national, social versus television, gaming versus movies. If you want to think about the gaming versus movies battle, gaming generates about $150 billion a year in revenue. Movies only generates around $50 billion a year in revenue, according to the 2019 final revenue. 2020 is not a really great gauge for the movie system. Uh-oh, I lost my map. Okay, thank you. So when you look at this ecosystem, three major winds of change are blowing through this universe that are going to drive the universe and its combatants over the next decade. And looking at this map as I was preparing for this semester really gave me that aha moment of these three major drivers, the winds of change that are blowing all these planets around. The first one that I came to was the advertising single sales media model or business model versus the subscription recurring revenue business model. Television started as an advertising only business, evolved over time to a dual revenue stream with advertising and subscriptions. And now subscriptions, Netflix, Disney Plus, are really one of the biggest drivers in the television ecosystem. But this is just as true when you look at the television ecosystem as it is when you look at the gaming ecosystem. Today, Roblox is going to go public, and it's going to be valued at around $30 billion. I think it'll actually probably pop up to closer to $40 billion by the end of the day. And they're in direct competition. That's a free service primarily. It's free to play. So is Fortnite, which is an Epic game. Those are both free to play, but you make purchases in app, either for Robux on Roblox or for skins and armor in Fortnite. And that's in direct competition with Activision, which is a single unit sales or other kinds of business models, or Nintendo, which sells consoles and games as single units. That's also true in the Apple versus Spotify world. Spotify is a advertising business, but it is also a subscription business. They have more free advertising-based users than they do subscription-based users, but 93% of the revenue on Spotify is driven by subscription. 93% of the Spotify revenue every year is driven by subscription, not by the 55% of people who are on an ad-supported free service. Apple Music is entirely driven by subscription. When you look at Viacom CBS, $1 out of every 5 spent on television advertising is spent in the Viacom CBS ecosystem. They also just launched Paramount Plus, which is a pure play subscription service with an ad-supported version. Netflix currently only has a single revenue stream, which is subscription. Hulu, on the other hand, has a multi-layered advertising subscription-only business. So one of the big winds of change that's blowing through this ecosystem is the tension between the business models of ad-supported and single unit sales and subscription and recurring revenue. It's interesting to see that Microsoft, which was in real trouble about a decade ago, really transformed their business and became one of the 3 most valuable companies on earth by moving from a single unit sales business, selling disks and downloads of software, into a recurring revenue service, subscription for Microsoft 365. LinkedIn is an advertising business, but it also has a premium subscription model. Xbox is a single unit sales business. They sell games and they sell consoles, but Microsoft is really moving that to a recurring revenue business with a subscription gaming service as well. Apple, great company. 3 years ago, 65% of their revenue was driven by single unit sales of one product, iPhones. They have moved in 3 years to become a recurring revenue business, putting services up to 20% of their revenue last year, and iPhones, single unit sales, down to 50%. So when you look at this ecosystem and the individual players in it, you have to think about the business models and the tensions between advertising and recurring revenues, single unit sales and subscriptions. The second big wind of change in this ecosystem, again, when you think about the Recode model and you see these large planets, Comcast, Disney, Netflix, they look a lot smaller compared on this map here. So the second large driver in the ecosystem over the next 10 years are what I call the $1 trillion Death Stars around the corners of the universe. And Attack of the Flywheels would be the subtitle in a Star Wars sort of way. You cannot look at any decision made by any of the smaller bubbles without the context of these $1 trillion Death Stars. You can't look at any move within these ecosystems without some kind of context of those 5 companies having influence over how the rest of the ecosystem works. One, because each one of those big Death Stars has their major influence on everybody else's business. So for example, Amazon Cloud Services runs underneath the business models of a lot of the other businesses on this map. Secondarily, when you think about advertising, 2 companies control 65% of all the digital advertising, the largest chunk of advertising business right now. That duopoly is Facebook and Alphabet. Now, they're also facing great regulation in the United States and in Europe. And so the decisions they make around that advertising business, including the decision to collude with each other and conspire to fix prices, there's an email between the 2 of them in the current antitrust case against Google. The decisions they make influence literally everybody else who survives on advertising in this ecosystem. Apple's decision to charge a percentage of every app in the App Store influences everybody else in this ecosystem. Their decision to try to take a percentage of in-app sales from Fortnite really influences the business in the gaming sector. Amazon's decision to go into the podcasting business by buying Wondery influences Spotify, their next door neighbor. And then you have to look at these businesses that have billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars of cash on hand, and what decision they're going to buy next. What are they in the market for? Microsoft in the last 8 months tried to buy TikTok for $100 billion. Right after that, they tried to buy Pinterest for $50 billion. Microsoft can buy Pinterest with the change that's in the executive suite couch, in the cushions of that couch. If Amazon really decides to get into the music business, which they're kind of dabbling at now, they could easily buy Spotify for 60, 70, 80 billion dollars and not have to slow down the car in order to go to the store. And so all of the decisions that these $1 trillion flywheel Death Stars around the corner of the map make will definitely influence everybody else in this ecosystem. And it's very difficult to think about these individual businesses without context of each other. When you think about how each one of these businesses' decisions will influence other, Facebook and Alphabet facing deregulation for their advertising business. Facebook's advertising business is 98% of its revenue. 98% of the revenue of Facebook. They'll talk about Oculus till the sun comes down, but 98% of their revenue is derived by advertising, and that advertising model is built on being a duopoly. If they get regulated out of being a duopoly, what will they buy to fix their diversity of revenue? And that's going to be a big decision. I think they'll probably make a purchase this year to help on that. Imagine if Facebook buys Spotify, or Facebook buys Roku, or Facebook buys Viacom CBS. They have the capital to do it. How does that change their business model? Alphabet is another good one. 93, they talk about a lot of different products at Alphabet as well, but Google and YouTube are the vast majority of the revenue at that company. 93, 94% of the revenue at Alphabet is driven by advertising. 93, 94%. If they get regulated out of that duopoly, what will they buy to complement that single revenue source that they have? Imagine YouTube and Netflix together. Again, Netflix, great company, perhaps the best channel ever built, right? 205, 206 million subscribers. They are a single revenue source business. And, you know, for the most part, if you look at their earnings quarter on quarter, they have not been really profitable. They've been negative cash flow for quite some time, primarily because they're going to scale. You know, they are driving their business through investing in programming and in marketing to get to scale as far as SVOD goes. And they've sworn that they will never take advertising. Well, single revenue stream business, subscription business is great as long as the subscribers keep growing. But there's a good chance now that they have real competition, not only here, but around the rest of the world, from Disney and HBO Max and Peacock and Paramount Plus and Discovery Plus and Apple TV Plus and all the pluses. And they are going to face some headwinds as far as subscriber acquisitions go domestically. Plus, in a lot of places around the world, the subscription business is not a business model that's going to work. In Africa, it seems very unlikely that a recurring monthly fee for consumers is going to be a business that works. That is not a business model that is typically adopted by consumers in that continent. In India, for the most part, that is unlikely to be a successful business model. So they're either going to have to figure out a way to take advertising, and they have tested a linear model in France right now. I think the TikTok edition on their app also portends a potential dip in toe in the water for advertising. But also think about a combination of YouTube and Netflix. An advertising, pure advertising business, one of the best advertising platforms, one of the largest video platforms on the face of the earth, combined with a subscription-only business, and put those two things together. A great marketing platform. The second largest expenditure for Netflix after content is marketing. They're one of the largest spenders of marketing dollars in the United States. Those two things together make a whole lot of sense. You know, think about Microsoft. Well, they're clearly on the market to buy something. They have a decent recurring revenue business, but they don't really have an advertising business. LinkedIn has a little bit of advertising, and I'm a LinkedIn addict, and it's not a great product. But think about if Microsoft decided to get deeper in the gaming business. Who might they buy? You know, yes, they have Xbox and a really great platform there, but Roblox or Take-Two or EA makes a really nice combination with that. If they really want to get into the advertising business, Spotify is not a terrible buy for Microsoft. Hey, frankly, Viacom CBS is not a terrible acquisition. You know, Xbox is not only a gaming platform, it is one of the biggest platforms for connected devices for television watching and film watching in the United States. You know, so there are a ton of different places they can go. Discovery Scripts is an interesting combination with Microsoft as well. What's fascinating here is, you know, when you look at the $1 trillion Death Star flywheels, Disney, in the span of basically 16 or 17 months, has transformed itself from an acquisition target and an old school media company into its own potential Death Star flywheel. Disney had a terrible year last year. And I say that just on basic business economics. Their Their parks division had a terrible year, and parks division is usually somewhere around 30 to 35% of their revenue. Because of COVID, the parks department Parks and Rec went down. The movie theater business, their theatrical movie business was terrible last year because movie theaters were closed, and people were not going to the movies. In 2019, they eclipsed literally almost all the other studios combined. They had, I think, all top 10 of the movies in 2019 were Disney, Pixar movies. In the span of 1 year, though, during that terrible, shitty year, they doubled their market capitalization in 1 year. A year ago, they were worth half of what they're worth right now. And the only reason for that is their ability in a year to go from 0 or from 24 million SVOD subscribers to 100 million SVOD subscribers. The fastest anybody has done that, including Netflix. In 18 months, they went from 0 SVOD subscribers to 100 million SVOD subscribers around the globe. And they added they added almost $175 billion in market capitalization during that time. They also turned themselves into a true flywheel. They now have great direct-to-consumer business. They have a movie theater business when that comes back. They have a parks department that generates a tremendous amount of revenue for them. They have television. They own Hulu, which is the, I think, 4th or 5th largest MVPD or pay television, live television platform in the United States. And they have one of the great merchandise businesses of all time. And each one of those businesses sells each one of the other businesses. They have transformed themselves into probably an indelible force with a great moat around them that no one's going to be able to buy because no one's going to be able to afford the price. No one has the capital on hand. So also, when you think about how the Death Stars influence this, there's been a lot of conversation lately about perhaps Warner Media and NBC Universal merging. Why? Because of the $1 trillion Death Stars around the corner. They don't do that out of context. On this map, there's no reason for those two companies to combine. On this map, there's a ton of reasons for those companies to combine. So the second wind of change blowing through the media universe are the $1 trillion Death Stars, the tack of the flywheels around the corners of this map. The last wind of change blowing through this media ecosystem is something that came up during the last panel, and you know, obviously after the murder of George Floyd, many things have changed with regards to the social responsibility of corporations in the United States, and a large part of that was driven by the fact that you know, the murder of George Floyd and the aftermath of the protests in the streets and a lot of other social action that took place last year was riveting the country to their television sets as the world watched. We were also all trapped inside and we couldn't help but pay attention to it, which I think actually is part of the reason why we paid so much attention this time as opposed to previous times. But one of the major reasons that also happened was the demographics of the people drawing attention to it. One of the largest winds of change, one of the 3 largest winds of change through this ecosystem over the next decade is a move from a boomer and Gen X dominated world to a millennial and Gen Z dominated world, Gen Y, Gen Z dominated world. And I mean that in a number of different ways. First and foremost, as consumers, millennials and Gen Z are changing the world and changing the way we consume content in real time in front of our eyes. Roblox, 50% of their audience is people under the age of 14. Okay, so that is primarily Gen Z. Millennials are really driving the move to mobile with regards to a lot of content. Millennials and Gen Z are driving a mobile first economy and a move from the traditional pay TV ecosystem where you pay for a lot of channels that you don't watch and you're forced to watch ads inside those channels that you're paying for, which seems cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and cutting the cord to the tune of 6 million lost consumers in the pay TV ecosystem last year. And I probably think it's going to be between 8 and 10 million people lost from the pay TV ecosystem this year, you know, to the Netflixes, the Hulus, the Amazon Primes. Those two audiences are driving the way media is consumed. They're also driving the way media is bifurcated. So not only are you watching, I teach two classes, one at NYU and one at Fordham, and the vast majority of those students are either older Gen Zers or younger millennials. And every semester I ask them to raise their hand and say, have you ever watched Friends or The Office on Netflix and or Peacock? Most of them say, yes, on Netflix. No answer on Peacock. But I also then say, well, while you're watching Friends or The Office on Netflix, are you actually watching or are you doing something else? And keep your hand up if that's true that you're doing something else. 100% of them keep their hand up. And the things that they're doing while they're watching Friends or The Office on Netflix, mostly, and or HBO Max or Peacock, wherever you can find it these days, is that they're on social media. They're doing laundry. They're cooking. They're doing homework, hopefully the homework for my class. They're not really paying attention. And so this multitasked experience is really, I mean, I think we all do it, boomers and Gen Xers too, is really the new norm. You know, yes, I'm on Zoom paying attention to you, Professor Shapiro, but in reality, I'm playing Minecraft. You know, yes, I'm in this meeting with you, boss, who is a boomer on Zoom and it hasn't yet hit unmute, but I'm really looking at my stock portfolio on Robinhood. So that is a major influence in this ecosystem. And you can't look at any one of these. My daughter is watching, I don't know, some show on some platform. I'm not exactly sure. And she's 22. Yes, I know. I don't look old enough to have a 22-year-old. Thank you. But in reality, she's playing some game. I'm not really sure which game she's playing, but she has the show on in the background and she's playing a game. So the war of attention is not only between two things, but it's actually amidst two things at the same time. So that's one component to the move from a boomer Gen X dominated world to a millennial Gen Y, Gen Z dominated world. The second is every single one of these companies on this map will be run by a millennial relatively soon. Facebook already is. Snapchat already is. Twitter already is run by millennials. There is this enormous misperception amongst my cohort, Gen X, and the cohort before me, boomers, that millennials are kids. The oldest millennial is 40. 70% of parents with kids under the age of 20 are millennials. Millennials are running businesses. You will have a boss that is a millennial. If you don't already have one, you will soon. Gen Z, the oldest Gen Z is now 23, will be 24 by the end of this year. Yes, there's a blurring of a line between millennials and Gen Zs, and we can go into demographic dynamics in another keynote, and I'm happy to do that. I have a long presentation on that, longer than this one. But the workforce, the 18 to 49 demographic is almost entirely Gen Z and Gen Y right now. I would say probably north of 90% of the 18 to 49 demographic is Gen Y and Gen Z. Think about that. 100% of it will be, by the end of this decade, Gen Y and Gen Z. A huge chunk, 60, 70% of the workforce by the end of this decade will be Gen Z and Gen Y. Most senior decision makers at most of these companies by the end of this decade will be millennials. And the way they make decisions will be different from every generation that came before them. And then as Gen Z, there's going to be a Gen Z that creates a Facebook in the next 15 minutes. By the end of this speech, a Gen Zer will launch a Facebook and it will come in and it will eat everybody's lunch. You know, Mark Zuckerberg famously created Facebook while, sorry for the sirens, they're not coming for me. He famously created Facebook while at Harvard as a 19 or 20-year-old. You know, Snapchat was created at Stanford by Evan Spiegel when he was in his early 20s. So the next big Death Star is going to be created by a Gen Zer, and the way that person makes decisions and the way that company is run is going to be dramatically different from every company that's come before it, run by Gen Xers and Boomers. The second part of that is just thinking about the stories that are told through this media ecosystem. Whether it's a show on Netflix or I May Destroy You, which is a piece that I wrote about on LinkedIn earlier this week, created by Michaela Cole, or Euphoria and Zendaya winning an Emmy for Best Actress earlier this year, or the woman who just won the Golden Globe for Best Director, first woman, I think, to win a Golden Globe for Best Director for Nomadland. The types of stories that will be told, the people who are represented on screen, the people who are represented behind the camera, the people who are represented in the writer's room will be different, because the decisions are going to be made by a different cohort than traditionally has been made. Right now, in late night television, which is where a lot of our culture is driven, fortunately or unfortunately, whether you like it or not, John Oliver has the power to get the FCC website shut down. He has the power to get everybody fired at FIFA, right? Of the late night talk shows, all of them, all the Jimmys, all the Jimmys, and all the other rest of them, 75% of the writers in those writers' room are men. Right now, 2021, 75%. The majority of writers at the Sam Bee Show are men. That's not going to be true in 10 years. The vast majority of the writers in every writer's room across all this ecosystem in film and television, and the writers and the directors of films that win the Academy Award and that generate all this box office, the vast majority of them are white men. 93%, according to a UCLA study, 93% of all the senior jobs at all of the major entertainment media studios in the world are men. 80 to 90% of them are white. All of that is about to change. It's going to change because the culture is going to demand it, but it's also going to change because just friggin' math, man, demographics. These are the two most diverse generations in the history of Western culture. And so you got to get on board of that or you're going to get overwhelmed. It's just pure math. So those are the three big winds of change that are going to blow through this ecosystem. And one of the big table stakes for a company, if you're starting a company here, let me back up a little bit. So if you're a filmmaker or you're a content creator and you want to make something in this ecosystem, you have to think about who is it for, and how am I going to find my audience? And rather than say, this is a television show, think, well, maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's a game. Is it a streaming show? Is it a live show? When you want to think about the war for attention, think about OnlyFans. OnlyFans is a pay model, a subscription model, where artists sell their content directly to their fans for a price on a monthly basis. OnlyFans is now worth $3 billion. It started, like many things in the media business do, as porn. And now it is a direct to consumer platform for artists to sell their content to, thanks in large part to Cardi B, to their fans. Cameo. This is a rent-a-celebrity platform. Brian Baumgartner, who is the big white guy from The Office, is the largest earner on Cameo. He makes $1 million a year on Cameo, saying happy birthday to his fans at parties. Patreon is a $1 to $1.5 billion platform where podcasters basically say, subscribe to my podcast and pay me, not from an advertising standpoint, but pay me directly. On the opposite end of the scale here, Amazon Prime is the greatest subscription product probably on earth. 150 to 175 million people subscribe to Prime. They're not really sure whether it's because of the TV shows that are on there. Maybe it's because I get audiobooks. Maybe it's because I love getting my Prilosec. Yes, I have bad heartburn delivered for free to my home on a regular basis. Yes, I understand, by the way, don't comment at me that Washington Post is not directly owned by Amazon, that Jeff Bezos owns one. But let's be honest, they're the same thing. So this flywheel here, where they're making money in their sleep, the more you don't order something something for home delivery for free on a monthly basis, the more money Amazon makes off of your Amazon Prime subscription on a regular basis. So when you think about making your stories, or you think about your business models, you can't just think it's an advertising model, it's a subscription model, it's a television show. No, it's a podcast. You have to think about the kind of cradle to grave, holistic approach to content and the media business that is represented on this map. You have to think about who the audience is that you're trying to reach and where do they spend most of their time. WWE is this wonderful business. It's a family-run business for generations now, and it's a great business. They are both a live entertainment business. They are a merchandise business. Until very recently, they were a direct-to-consumer SVOD business. Now they are in partnership with Comcast, who decided to bolster their direct-to-consumer business and their advertising business by basically buying all of the 2 million subscribers that WWE had. Why? Great IP, great storytelling, rabid fan base. To a certain extent, OnlyFans and WWE demonstrate something that I think is going to be really one of the key tenets of the media ecosystem and embodies the 3 winds of change that are going through here. It is, I'd rather be 9 people's favorite things than 900 people's 9th favorite thing. I'd rather get paid directly by a group of very, very passionate fans on a monthly basis than try to sell ads to lots of people who kind of like me, but don't really and aren't really paying attention so that we can put ads in front of them. That's going to be, one of the major factors in the shifting sands of time within this ecosystem, to mix the 15th metaphor during this speech. So those are the 3 big winds of change that I see going through this. I can spend probably 4 more hours just on this map, and I'm happy to at any point if you'd like. But out of this map was driven another large, big aha for me, and that was this map, or this chart, which I call my Media Wars scorecard. And on here really is a grading metric, or a grading mechanism, a rubric, if you will, for grading different companies inside the media wars and predicting the potential success or failure and the reasons for that inside this ecosystem. So across the x-axis, the criteria are utility. Is this company, is this organization a utility? Does its fan base wake up every day and have to use it? Value. Is the enterprise offering more value than they're asking in return, either from attention or money from their user base? Do they have a rabid audience? Is it a cult? Do they have super fans? One of the big winds of change, do they appeal to Gen Y and Gen Z? Do they know how to manage Gen Y and Z? Are they appealing to Gen Y and Gen Z through social justice by doing what I call blackwashing, putting up a black square on their Instagram account to say that they think Black Lives Matter, but then not talking to the governor and the legislature in Georgia when they changed the voting rights there to suppress the vote? 5 years ago, when Georgia decided to enact an anti-queer bill as part of their laws in the state of Georgia, all the media companies went to Georgia and said, we will pull our business out if you do this. None of them have spoken up this week when Georgia passed 12 bills to suppress the vote. If you either do think Black Lives Matter, or you kind of are just putting a square on your Instagram. And I bring this up because doing the latter is no longer going to be enough. And Gen Y and Gen Z will know when you're fucking with us. Diverse business model. And this is a big part of the flywheel criteria. Do you rely exclusively on one revenue stream to drive your business? Are you Netflix? Are you Facebook? Are you Google? Do you only have one revenue stream? Spotify has 2 revenue streams, advertising and subscription. But in reality, 93% of the revenue comes from subscription. That's not a diverse revenue model. And are you a flywheel? Like Amazon, like Disney, does each one of your business businesses sell all of your other businesses? Do you make money in your sleep? A flywheel is the best flywheel that I can use it as an example is a merry-go-round. And remember, when you put your kids on the merry-go-round and that first push is really, really hard, or the one that has to change direction is really, really hard. You have to stop it and then push the other way. But then with each successive push, it gets easier and easier until at some point, one little finger push, the thing just speeds up. Do you have a business that does that? So when you look at Apple, they're diversified. And by the way, the key is yes, nah, so close, or meh. So Apple's revenue model has moved from one entirely reliant on the iPhone to one where their services model is now generating about 20% of their revenue. But in reality, their gaming platform, which is part of their service, is not having great success. Their television platform doesn't have enough content to keep their subscribers around, so they're getting a meh. Amazon scores across the board. They are a utility. We all know that. They do offer great value. They have super fans. Twitch is, by the way, just as a quick example on this, Twitch generates 3 times as much video usage than YouTube on a given quarter, 6 times as much as Facebook. As far as live streaming goes, Twitch generates around 10 times more than YouTube and around 12 times more than Facebook. So they have rabid fans. IMDb has rabid fans. The Boys has rabid fans. They are a diverse revenue model. They do, as I just demonstrated, appeal to Gen Y and Gen Z, which is probably the largest channel for Gen Z on the face of the earth, and they are a flywheel. Disney, I would say, if you have kids under the age of 12, it is a utility. For the rest of us, it's very close to becoming a utility, especially with 100 million subscribers. They have a rabid user base and across the board. Netflix, they don't have a diverse revenue model. They are not a flywheel. AT&T, their value, it's very hard to understand exactly where people see their value these days. So I think it's meh. Gen Y and Gen Z, yeah, I mean, they definitely have Adult Swim, which is a hugely popular platform. They have the DC Universe, which is hugely popular. But I don't know that necessarily everybody associates those two brands with AT&T. And across the line. And by the way, I decided to look at these companies because they were the biggest companies out there, the biggest in their sector, and the easiest to point to with regards to these metrics. But you can use this scorecard for any business. So pick a business from this map. Sony, are they a utility for if you're a PlayStation fan? Maybe, but for the rest of them, maybe not. They do own Crunchyroll, so that might be a utility for some people. They have a rabid fan base. Are they offering value? I don't know. It's a good question. I think if you're a big PlayStation user, perhaps, but for the rest of their customers, perhaps not. Are they appealing to Gen Y and Gen Z and across? But if you're starting a business, if you're trying to decide on your business model right now, I think these are the 6 most important criteria to ask you when you're whiteboarding your business, when you're putting together your presentation for investors. We all love a good SWOT analysis. Who doesn't love a good SWOT analysis? But I think this type of chart is a substantially better way to grade yourself than a SWOT analysis is. Not just who are your competitors in this ecosystem, because it's everybody. It's a war for attention. If you're in the media business, everybody's your enemy. Everybody, because they're all competing for your attention, for the attention of the consumer, sorry. But here, are we a utility? Do we offer value? What is that value? Do we have a fan base? And who is that super fan base? Who is that cult we are appealing to? Do we cater to Gen Y and Gen Z? And are we taking care of everything that those two diverse, very, very self-aware generations who are about to run the fucking world, are we catering to them both as consumers and as employers? Do we know how to manage them? Do we know how to retain them? Do we know how to incentivize them? Do we know how to talk to them? Are they in the room when we're making those decisions? Do we have a diverse revenue stream? Not just like, oh, we'll sell plush toys and we'll make movies, but down the line, if this is successful, what other businesses will be spurned from it? And what is the flywheel we're looking to create? How do we earn money in our slate? And so that's how I grade all of these things, all of these businesses within this ecosystem. Just a couple of quick things to look at here. Twitch was the site of one of the biggest concerts of this year. The Weeknd, I'm sorry, not Twitch, TikTok. The Weeknd, who had a meh performance at the Super Bowl, had a 12 million person concert on TikTok live. 12 million people showed up to watch him live. Travis Scott had a 15 million person concert on Fortnite, which is owned by Epic and Tencent. 15 million people showed up concurrently for free to watch Travis Scott play music on Fortnite. And then they spent like $75 a pop for Travis Scott Fortnite merch. Yeah, that happened. So live entertainment is in this ecosystem as well. The Samsung as a platform, they are connected devices are going to be one of the biggest live entertainment platforms and subscription platforms on the face of the earth. They have $503 billion in market cap and a lot of cash burning a hole in their pocket. You can dive into this map forever. Zoom has a shit ton of cash on hand. They have a very interesting business model, but not necessarily diverse. Do they get bought? Do they combine with someone else? What are they investing in? Roblox is about to generate $30 billion in market cap today. What are they going to do with that money? This map has nuances in it that you should spend a little time in as you think about where to put your stock investments, where to spend your money in your company, who your competition is in the media wars, and how you win the war for attention that's coming down the pike. This is how to grade yourself within that war. I am Evan Shapiro. My company's called eShap. I'm happy to come in and do either a shorter, longer, or different version of this presentation for you at any point. And I think right now we're going to take questions. I think Steve is going to join me on, there he is.
So, we started the morning off by saying today was going to be exciting and terrifying. And it's like you landed the plane perfectly.
Oh, thanks.
Based on the applause, I'd say people agree. All right, so we have a bunch of questions. Here's how this is going to work. We'll ask some questions off the question board. You're also welcome to join these 3 boxes at the bottom if you want to be called on to ask a question via audio and video, and then we'll call you up from there. So let's just start. No. Let's start with the question that's the easiest one. Is it possible to have this presentation?
Meaning
down your slides. The
map is on my LinkedIn. You can download it from there, and so is the Media Wars chart.
And this presentation is also going to be put up on Facebook and YouTube and a bunch of other places. So
did I sign a release? Did I sign a release?
You did. You signed a digital release. So let's
always read the terms and conditions.
Sorry. Do you think that games and film will merge in the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I do. They already have. I mean, Apple spent the largest amount of money at Sundance in history, $25 million for CODA, Children of Deaf Adults, and they have Arcade, a gaming business. They are already one business. Amazon is in the gaming business and they're in the movie business. Disney is in the gaming business and they're in the movie business. Do I think that they're going to, I think gaming is it's 100 hours of movie, right? And it generates substantial amount more revenue than a single film release do. So yeah, I think there'll be continuums of it. That said, I think there's something to be said for the 16:9 square that is sacrosanct. Nobody who's done a choose your own adventure movie, it's never worked. Bandersnatch aside, so I do think people want to get lost in Nomadland and in La La Land and in all the lands, Zombieland. And so I think there's going to be a bifurcation of, filmmaking and gaming that will never completely converge, but I do think you'll see IP span that gap more and more over time.
And by the way, a perfect transition in a few minutes to our next presentation, which is a fireside chat with Connie Kennedy from Epic Games to talk about exactly this. So I don't exactly understand this question, but it's in here, so I'm going to try and present it. Acquire new customers, monetize features and prices, retention for the business model. Customers want flexibility. How do you position yourself to get noticed in such a large solar system?
The war for getting noticed is the hardest part. I mean, launch at Quibi, I think one of the largest problems Quibi had was, there was no way for them to spend enough money to convince the consumers they were going after to change their entire behavior set in the span of 7 months, which is all they gave themselves to survive. And so, when you're competing against Netflix and Disney, two of the largest advertising spenders on the planet, and Amazon being another one, it's very hard to differentiate yourself. I think you really have to brace it's a improv tenet, yes and. Amazon is a yes and business. Are we an advertising platform? Yes, we're the third largest advertising platform on the face of the earth. Are we a subscription business? Yes. Are we a single unit sales business? Yes, you can buy our Fire Stick. Are we a retail environment? Yes, we own Whole Foods. Are we a B2B business? Yes, we own cloud services. And so I think Hulu is another really great example. Do you want live TV? We have that. Do you want an ad-free environment? We have that. Do you want an ad-supported, less expensive environment? We have that too. And so whatever your product is, giving the consumer the ability to scale up and scale down what they want from you, I think is going to be table stakes. I think the consumer doesn't necessarily want infinite choice. Netflix has said that the time to choose something to watch is their biggest challenge right now. Hence the top 10 list and the automatic play thing that they're doing. And so this infinite choice has created a choice paralysis amongst the consumer. However, the consumer does want the ability to scale up and down the amount of advertising, what they pay. And I think you have to give the consumer that power.
So one of the things that I find as a viewer, particularly of Netflix, is that I have gone from watching no international content, almost, except for the occasional indie film, to watching a lot of dubbed, third-party Denmark, Norway, Sweden, detective political shows. First of all, is Netflix just killing it there? Are they way ahead of everybody else in terms of being an international network?
Yeah, and that's the power of the algorithm, by the way. So they bought all this stuff to have local versions I mean, I think one of the only other places they have a headquarters internationally is Spain. They started buying a bunch of stuff in Spain for the Spanish market and then putting it on the platform in the United States. And they found that it was absolutely fucking killing it. By the way, if all you do for the next month is watch the Spanish language content from Spain on Netflix, you will not be bored at all. It is the most diverse, most interesting, most complex storytelling on the platform, bar none. But you could also watch Lupin, which is this brilliant French language caper series that I'm absolutely obsessed with. So yeah, they're killing it, but they're not going to be alone. Amazon has a lot of content that's international, and you're going to see everybody else follow suit because the algorithm is telling us, hey, you know what? Guess what? Americans can read.
Well, read or listen to dubbed content, which is...
Yeah, but that subtitled one is doing quite well. I mean, I mean, Parasite is a really good example. Like, despite the fact that people have not typically gone to the movie theaters to see international films, there is a very large audience for international films in the United States, especially if you're paying for a myriad of content and you just want to check something out.
Carrie just asked, can we get Lupin in French?
Yeah, it is in French.
I think, well, yeah, again, this is realizing that there's this avalanche of choices is wonderful and a little overwhelming too.
It is overwhelming.
All right, so here's another question, this one from William Tam. He says, how does Google's backing away from immersive, cardboard, et cetera, have an impact on this space?
I mean, I can go on and on about AR and VR. I mean, I think it shows that I think the largest problem that demonstrates is that Google does not have a diverse revenue stream, and they have no idea how to solve that. Fiber, cardboard, glass, we can go on and on and on. They've tried everything, and all they can do is sell ads and your privacy. And the entire business model is predicated on being a monopoly in search and a duopoly in advertising. And that is not a long-term business model. Uber's business model of not paying employees as employees is a bad business model, and they're about to find that out. Google and Facebook's business model of being a duopoly that conspires with one other company to fix prices, it's not a long-term business model, and they're going to have to diversify their revenue models. And I think both companies make purchases this year to help fix that.
So Kirby XR asks, will advertising ever go away?
No. From soap operas, soap companies paid for soap operas to advertise their soap. I Love Lucy. When you look at the show open and I Love Lucy, it's a heart. These are 2 cigarette butts, and that's because a cigarette company paid for the entire first season of I Love Lucy. We're going back to that model. I think you'll see a huge influx of branded content become the norm now. Advertising will never go away because we need the $80 billion in the United States every year to like, there is no Mad Men, there is no Breaking Bad, there is no Walking Dead, there is no Portlandia, which I helped executive produce. There is no The Americans. There is no, most of the great shows that we think of, or a lot of the great shows we think of, were created because advertisers supported them. And we need advertising to sell the products that earns all of us our livings, frankly. But advertising is broken until the media ecosystem admits it has a problem, that it does not know how to measure or accurately demonstrate that the advertisements aren't being watched by bots. It will never fix the problem that has in front of it. So whoever solves the ad problem is going to make the next $1 trillion. Someone needs to do it. But no, I don't think it'll ever go away. The best ads right now are in one of the hottest medias, which is podcasting. They are read by the host. They are listened to more than most other ads. They are effective. They are measurable. And they are working. The problem is that there's just not enough inventory to really create that as a business model. Podcasting doesn't make a lot of money on advertising, only about $1 billion a year inside 2.2 million podcasts, because you can only stuff so many of those ads in a podcast. So I don't think it'll go away, but it needs to be fixed. It's broken.
Lux asks a question about 5G. He says, will 5G have any knock-on effects to the ecosystem? I'm not sure what knock-on effects means exactly, but 5G, what's your take on 5G broadly?
I think it's not working yet. I don't know anybody who has 5G who thinks it's performing, but let's assume that towers are built and the rollout is successful. Yeah, I think you have I think you wind up having, by the way, hey Simon, I think the way the 5G will become the national broadband. And when there is a national outdoor broadband, mobile first content will wind up being only more successful, and therefore short form storytelling, I think, will be incredibly popular. I mean, TikTok is absolutely killing it, but they're, Triller and Rizzle are doing more around scripted short form content. And I think 5G enables not only mobile gaming, but mobile storytelling and mobile live streaming in a way that it's here. Obviously, we're all doing it right now, but I think it'll be much more pervasive as 5G rolls out.
So Miriam Vosmir asks, you summed up an impressive list of fields where women are underrepresented. Is there a list of those pretty shocking numbers, and is it available somewhere?
I did a piece on the lack of female writers in the writers' room on my LinkedIn. I did a piece on a lack of racial diversity in all of content, professionally produced scripted content on my LinkedIn piece. There's a great piece. There are 3 pieces embedded in that last piece from UCLA, Annenberg Center, from Colors of Change, which is now a 3-year-old study, and from one more I'm not remembering right now. The lack of diversity, Netflix's own study that they put out last week or 2 weeks ago, measuring their own lack of diversity or progress in diversity, is a pretty impressive study on Netflix. every day a new study comes out. The lack of diversity in tech is studied by, all you have to do is Google lack of diversity in tech and 12 studies will come up. A great example of what I was talking about, the change in the ecosystem driven by Gen Z and Gen Y, Google's employees are unionizing. They're not unionizing to get more pay, to get better hours, to get better vacation, to get weekends off. They're unionizing because of the lack of diversity at the company and how that influences the institutional bias of search, of YouTube, and everything else. That's not a thing that would have happened 25 years ago. There was a walkout at Google because of that. So, if you look hard enough, every day, I spend an hour every morning just looking for articles to read, and then another hour writing about those articles on LinkedIn. You will find all the information you need about the lack of diversity and the distance we have to go. As I focus primarily on our ecosystem. I've been associated with the Ghetto Film School now for close to 20 years, which is about tearing down the ghetto walls around Hollywood. Not around the neighborhoods where our students come from, but around the media business itself, so that people who don't traditionally get inside those walls can get inside those walls. The information's out there every day, and all you have to do is do a survey of your own company to show how far your own company has come.
I know, I'm working on it. Thank you very much for your answer. Thanks.
Thank you.
I thought it was a question. All right, here's a good one. As Netflix and other streamers continue to pump out content and merge international markets, how do streamers fight choice paralysis? I just remember as a kid going into a Baskin Robbins where they had 31 flavors and just being like, vanilla, chocolate. Choice paralysis is a good question.
There's a great study on choice paralysis that shows that the more choice you have, the less choices you make. If you Google choice paralysis study, you will find that study. I can't remember exactly where it is. The discoverability aspect of every part of that ecosystem is probably one of the three largest problems we face. The first problem I just talked about is the advertising problem and how to fix that. The second problem is choice paralysis. How do I find a podcast? There are 2.2 million. How do I find a television show? There's a gajillion of them. How do I find a movie to watch? How do I find anything? What am I doing right now? There's too many choices. And I think one of the solves is bundling all of the services together into one searchable device or database. I think Apple TV Plus's ultimate goal is to be that solution. I think Amazon Channel's goal is to be that resource. I don't have any information. I'm not privy to any information to prove that. It's just a gut sense. But I think whoever can create a service that enables me to just say, I'm in the mood for this, show me 4 shows, or I'm in the mood for this, give me 5 podcasts, and have it be good results, I think will be AI, as Abram just said, is a really good resource for that. The problem with algorithms and artificial intelligence is it's only as good as the database it has. So Netflix's algorithm is great for what is on the Netflix platform. But if you're in the mood for X and you ask Netflix algorithm to solve that, what if they don't have X? The reason why they're putting out a movie every week in 2021 is because their movies selection is not great, or hasn't been traditionally great. Now it's getting better, but it's all movies that they're making. And so, the algorithm and the artificial intelligence is only as Hal proved very famously, the artificial intelligence is only as good as the information it's given.
All right, last question. So we have hundreds of people on this live stream asking questions, engaged. Many of them are independent producers. Many of them are people who, for a moment, the pile of money that was coming from Netflix seemed like maybe this would be the age of the indie. And looking at your map, that seems a little bit not as likely. Like maybe there was an indie moment, and now we're eclipsing that. Are you a fan of the indie moment, or is that just a moment in time?
I'm a fan. I mean, I've made my whole career off the indie moment. I mean, Portlandia is probably the thing I'm most known for, as other than that freaking map. And that's a very indie show. I mean, probably 87% of the people who have ever watched Portlandia are in one of these rooms on this platform right now. So, it's a very indie show. Almost everything I've ever done, from Please Like Me to Comedy Bang Bang to Harmon Quest, would be considered indie. I don't think that moment has passed. Netflix is going to do a lot of movies between $5 and $50 million, a lot. But the moment of the small search party Fleabag Portlandia show, I don't think is going to be the next 5 years. We went from having a lot of buyers of professionally produced content, lots of channels at NBC, Universal, Comcast, lots of channels at Warner Media, lots of channels at Fox and Disney, to 6 buyers. There are now 6 buyers, 6 or 7. Apple, Netflix, Peacock, Paramount Plus, Netflix, Disney, Hulu, Fox. And they're only going to take really big swings on really big stars. I like to say you can sell any piece of content you want as long as Reese Witherspoon is in it. As long as Shonda Rhimes is the showrunner, as long as J.J. Abrams is associated with it, as long as Judd Apatow is showrunning it. And so, yeah, I think packaging is going to be incredibly important. That said, if you've got a really good film script and you can attach somebody of note to it, you're going to get a hearing at Hulu. You're going to get Palm Springs, sold for $17-18 million at the previous Sundance Film Festival. And yeah, Andy Samberg was in it, but that was really an independently produced film. Coda sold for $25 million. It's about children of deaf adults. Marlee Matlin, who's an Academy Award winner, is in it, but that was an independently produced film. I don't think you get any more independent than Nomadland. I mean, it's about an old lady walking through the frickin' desert, for Christ's sake. So, that's a real independent film, and it's, gonna do incredibly, incredibly well, and it's on Hulu. So there is an independent film movement coming. And in fact, I think we're going to see a new goal. I think what the golden era of television was to Mad Men and all those, and Breaking Bad and The Americans and Portlandia and all those other shows, and Transparent and Stranger Things. I think that there's going to be a golden era of independent film for films like Nomadland and I Care a Lot, and films like that. But instead of the landmark cinemas as the primary access point for them, it's going to be Hulu and Netflix and Apple and HBO Max. I think that's going to become your new indie cinema. It's very unlikely I would have seen One Night in Miami on opening weekend, because I don't go out to the movies that often. If we were in the before times, I saw it on opening weekend, during the pandemic. We're not going back to a time where movie theaters are the primary resource for seeing movies. We are in a new era where the primary resource for seeing first run movies is going to be on streaming. You may not like that, people who are pure cinephiles who yell at me on LinkedIn, but that's where we're going. And that's going to be really, really good for filmmakers, because it was really hard to get screens for small, smart, independent films, even if they had a movie star in them in the before times. That's going to be less so on a moving forward basis.
Evan, thank you so much for taking the time. A
My
huge
pleasure.
round of applause, everybody, for Evan.
Thank you, everybody.
And we are, check that out. And we're heading off to our fireside chat with Connie. Thank you.
Thank you.